Well, in Ukraine there is a catastrophe, and indeed it is a catastrophe in power, which concerns the investigation of anti-corruption against ministers. I think you all remember this wonderful person, and on the left and on the right are all beautiful people. On the left, this giant, this is our former head of the oil and gas industry of Ukraine, who suddenly requalified himself as a lover of Ukrainians abroad, who suddenly wanted to return Ukrainians from abroad to Ukraine. There were a lot of proclamations, a special ministry was created under him. This is really the only ministry that was created specifically for one person. I have not heard about others. And there are no such ministries anywhere else. The Ministry of National Unity of the Common People, so to speak, the Ministry of Minerals, and he told me this Chernyshov told a lot about how he will now return everyone, but suddenly he ran away himself about a week, I think 3 years ago or maybe 2. Brought his family out, then suddenly returned against him, opened a case for the bill of anti-corruption. First were accused of unlucky 14 million basically for the minister of Ukraine. This is how for a couple of hours you can make these 14 million with one finger clipped and no one will ask you where you took them at all. No one needs this. Well, then it turned out that he seems to be accused of $1 billion already. Well, $1 billion is serious even for the minister, even this is the most. The richest minister, this very Chernyshov, but nevertheless, as it were, this is still a problem, but nevertheless. Again, a pledge of 120 million hryvnia was made for him, as a wife, probably a very talented entrepreneur. Then several entrepreneurs were introduced, already others who then began to declare that they did not do anything like this is not their name and they do not know anything at all. Nevertheless, the Anti-Corruption Agency of Ukraine refused to remove this minister from performing his immediate duties, that is, the return of Ukrainians from abroad, well, as if he returned himself. Well, he copes with his duties, that is, well, as if he recommended himself in the best way, so to speak, pleasantly, but then suddenly an investigation began against another minister. That is, it did not work out here, the minister did not break down, so bring another one in. And here is already a little something worse. This is a comrade, this is our former Minister of Defense, and you see him suddenly searched, found the left phone, and something else. Well, that is, a person turned out to be 2 phones, as many as 2, you can imagine the level of corruption in Ukraine if the minister finds 2 phones, one of which is the left one, and the other, well, as it were, the right one, so this is difficult. Well, in short, it tells about the fact that he was taken away from a number of significant documents, then he had problems found in terms of buying products for the army at high prices. They remembered about those very chicken eggs for 17 hryvnia. I don't know why they didn't remember about scumbria for 8, if anyone doesn't remember. Once Zelensky's wife was asked about something, she began to ask about how they are preparing or what she says, but we are simple people, so sometimes we go to the market there, we buy scumbria for 8 hryvnia, we prepare it, but at that time scumbria, I don't remember whether it was 200, well, this is such an obnoxious figure that, in principle, it is clear that the person is completely torn off, absolutely completely torn off from ordinary everyday life. As it were, here without a doubt, all these, how it is called the First Lady, they are most often really torn off because, well, for many years they have been in such an informational, so to speak. They do everything in a vacuum, they bring everything, they don't need money, but when they start to talk about how ordinary people live in a Sodomy Gomorrah begins, but in short, here are Sodomy Gomorrah in our plan with this Reznikov himself, and they promised him that, as it were, Reznikov himself declared some problems in 2023, of course, this is his own initiative, an investigation was carried out by his relatives. Source said that it is a common problem of the Russias. Not his close sources said that they did not withdraw any documents from Reznikov and the phone was scrolled. Nothing interesting except correspondence on publications in the media was not found. Well, in short, in addition to this comrade, there are also others, for example, this one, well, as it were, if this is a corruptionist then here we have a lot of questions, and we also have the beautiful Serhiy Prytula and Serhako, as it were. Literally, in my opinion, I showed him in the morning yesterday on the video, he crossed his hands there when he was asked how much he earns, and he says, I won't tell you, don't climb into my pocket, I won't climb into your pocket, but in short, of course, a volunteer should answer, that is, a person who lives on the funds provided. For the usual, Citizens, of course, everything is fine here, he has no problems with his reporting and no problems with the fact that he is photographed earlier, he was photographed like this, so seriously, courageously, straight, just. A cheap man's tear did not flow on his unwashed cheek, this is kind of a minus, of course, but this is courage together with this Reznikov himself, this probably impresses someone I do not know. It produces someone, but I will remind you that he threatened with this very photo of the murder of blogger Miroslav Oleshko, he said that different collaborators of this option, that is, with the return to Ukraine from the dacha in the hands of the SBU, so-called justice, did not take advantage of it, so now at the concert of the cab zone, well, the cab zone is dead, so this reference as Sergei thinks that this is such a direct violated reference and 75 and in the forehead destroy the doubtful he used this higher form of sarcasm, no one will naturally find out anything, but in fact, of course, the case is a little different and this is a direct threat, in fact, the murder of Miroslav Oleshko. But as it were, in a democratic country, it sounds somehow very strange, in short, already 2 ministers are accused of corruption in the deeds of someone. X another kind of like next who of them there what role to play is not important, but nevertheless. Really, I would say that if within a couple of weeks there are 2 ministers at once, well, that is people from the highest society and political abominations and establishments, no matter how you call them. But if they are accused of corruption, then there is something to think about and this is really a catastrophe. Further, it turns out that suddenly this happened and there are different all sorts of economists approaching the power telling about the great achievements of economic in Ukraine. A little bit of the matter is not so, that is, it is not at all that the case is absolutely. The case is not so bad, in short, and here they tell us about the fact that real economists assess the losses of Ukraine in 40% of the employment. This was reported in the Kiev School of Economics, as I understand it, there are adequate specialists working there. And now about 1.7 million Ukrainians who previously worked in Ukraine are abroad. This is more than 10% of the pre-war economically active population of the country. Darya Marchik said about it. Darya Marchik is like a deputy minister of social